欢迎大家来到今天Blue Rider 2上海外滩，我们所代理的法国艺术家 Pascal Dombis，这一次的中国首个展 DÉJÀ 似曾相识。这是 Blue Rider 2第一次在上海来推出这位代理艺术家的作品。Pascal Dombis， 他出生于法国，1965年出生，现在居住及创作在巴黎。那他是法国国立里昂应用科学学院主修工程科学，后来又在美国波士顿呢研习电脑艺术。他现在居住和创作于巴黎。我们今天呢也很荣幸由 Pascal Dombis 来上线，和我们一起来谈谈他的创作的理念。也很欢迎今天大家在一条直播面前收看的朋友们，以及透过微赞收看的朋友们，当然还有现场的媒体嘉宾朋友们。今天担任我们翻译的是Angela。所以我们今天原则上还是台北、上海以及巴黎的3地连线。那现在呢，我们就来跟 Pascal Dombis 来谈一谈他的创作。Good morning, Pascal. Hello.
Good morning. Hello. Hello, Shanghai. Hello, Taipei.
So as we can tell from your CV, you actually studied engineering science and computer art when you are young. You're still young, okay? You're much younger, okay? When you sorry. Okay, so what makes you a professional artist by using computer as a language to create your artwork? So it seems to me you are studying engineering science. Seems to you are engineer instead of a professional artist. Could you talk about your artist career path to the audience?
好，那我们首先从第一个问题，就是从过去 Pascal 的这个经历里面可见，其实他在念书时期，他学的主要是这个工程科学还有电脑艺术的部分。那究竟是怎么样，他开始了他的艺术家生涯，成为一个专业的艺术家，然后来使用电脑进行他的这个创作的？
Well, in fact, I was doing painting since I was a kid, and I've been doing creating artwork as a teenager. I was doing exhibition, and I just, choose the engineering science as a kind of backup to the art, and I was good at it. Just it was very easy for me. That's was no effort to be good in maths and science. So, but I was doing during my study painting. I was exhibiting, and I never thought to really have a career in engineering. All my goal was just to be an artist. And at what point, at the end of the 80s, so that's it's quite a long time ago, Elsa. So at the end of the 80s, I was stuck in the artistic process. It was the time of the postmodernism, playing with history, with citation, quotation. Recycling ideas, and I didn't feel comfortable in that period.
那大概从我在很小的时候，其实我就开始做我的这个绘画的创作。那大概在我青少年时期，其实我当时也已经办了非常非常多的展览。那主要我在念书的时候选择了这个科学来作为我的这个学科，其实一方面是对我来讲这是一个很上手、很容易的事情，然后另外一方面，其实这个对我来讲，它其实是一个在支持我的这个艺术生涯的其中的一个替代方案。那因为对我来讲，数学啊、科学这些其实相较之下其实是容易的，所以我在学习的时候，我是用工程科学来作为我的主修。那在过去，其实我念书的时期，不管是我在画画还是我在展览的时候，我的目标其实一直都是一致的，我是希望成为一个艺术家，而不是成为一个工程师。那大概在80年代的时候，其实在我创作的过程里面， 当时其实这个所谓后现代主义是非常兴盛的，就可能会利用很多的可能过去的历史啊，或是一些引用的形态，或者说就是不同的媒材开始窜出。
So it was the postmodern time, the end of modernism fiction or whatever. And in my own soul, I really wanted to continue the modernist stories, to create something new, create my own tool, my own way of expression, my own media, my own support. And I was at the time doing painting, combining painting and element, a bit like Rob Rauschenberg. And I was involved in implying and integrating printmaking in my paintings. And at one point, just by accident, I encountered what was called at the time the Fractal Algorithm. And end of the 80s, Mandelbrot discovered the fractal geometry. And he established the geometry more as a way to describe the nature, cowness, the nature, a difficult and complicated shape. But the beauty of it is that in this algorithm, a very, very simple line, just 2 lines of code, could create all kinds of pattern, whether it's geometric pattern, urbanistic pattern, organic, baroque. And that really had a big shock to me. And then based on that, let's say, new thing, I decided to stop painting and try to focus using this algorithm. Yeah.
那所以在当时这个后现代主义的这个时代呢，其实各种各样的媒材或者说不同的形式开始慢慢发展。其实，在过程里面，我也慢慢多少的去学习到一些不同的媒材，但是我一直在尝试找到一个我自己的语言，或者是我自己使用的这种比较适合的方式。那所以我开始在绘画里面，其实当时像Robert Rauschenberg 这样子的拼贴的艺术家，对我来讲也是有蛮大的影响。我也在我的创作里面可能有很多这种拼贴复合媒材的方式，但是我慢慢也加入一些这个关于印刷或者说不同的材料加在我的创作里面，一直到我慢慢接触到这个所谓电脑工程语言的时候，我发现在这个所谓的分形演算法这个工具上面，其实它可以创造出很多不同的可能，所以我就慢慢发展了一些所谓这种分形几何，它可以去创造出很多不同的这个图样，可能有点是像类自然的，或者说有机形状的，或者说各种不同的这个几何的形状。那其实实际上这个分形演算法是由非常非常简单的线条开始去发散，然后可以创造出非常多不同的可能。所以就大概在那个时候，我开始停止我的绘画创作，然后开始来使用这个演算法来进行我的创作。
So Elsa, to summarize the start of my career, I'm not a computer engineer that turned into artist. I'm rather an artist that turned into using computers because just I was good at it and it was the opportunity. That's basically the starting of my career.
所以就总结来讲，其实我不是从一个所谓的电脑工程师，然后来转向了这个艺术家，而反而是我其实一直以来我就是一个艺术家的角色，只是在我过去的这个经历里面，我把这个电脑工程的这个技术用在了我的艺术家的生涯里面，然后开始继续发展我的这个艺术创作。
Yeah, I understand maybe you don't like the word complicated. But when I first encountered your works, I found there are several layers of your, from the beginning to the process to the output, the final work. It's a bit complicated for me. And after we had the in-depth conversation and more understanding of work, I gradually can see maybe each step is not that complicated, but as a whole, I think it needs some interpretations for your works. And today we are going to know maybe a little bit of your process.
那其实我了解，在过去其实我们很多次的谈话里面，我晓得其实你可能也许不太习惯或不太喜欢用所谓这个复杂的这种形容词来形容你的创作，但实际上在你的创作里面，实际上它是有非常非常多不同的层次，从你开始进行创作到最后成果的这个呈现，其实它是有非常多不同的层次。那所以在我们很多次的谈话之下，其实我也可以理解每一个步骤，也许每一层次其实都是相当单纯不复杂的，但是就成果而言，其实可能我们需要更多的这些理解来了解你的创作的这个过程。
Well, it is a difficult question because, first of all, I think our life is complicated. Outside world is complicated. I mean, everything is complicated. There is nothing really simple. And if it is simple, it's because we don't look carefully. So putting side apart, I think what I try to develop in my work is perspectivism, multiple viewpoint, multiple perspective. The fact that there is no single truth, there is no single right or wrong, but there is a multiple view of looking at things, and the reality is composed of multiple viewpoints. And it is the addition of this diversity, this viewpoint that create our reality, our world. This is what I try to convey in my artwork.
那当然，其实本来生活就是人生就是很复杂。其实什么事情要说它复杂，它都可以非常的复杂。那所以其实，在我的创作里面，我尝试去发展，或者说我想要强调的，其实反而就是这个很多元、很多层次的这种视角。没有什么东西其实是可能从单一的角度或是价值去进行判准的。所以其实，在我们的世界里面，其实也是由这些多元的视角组成了我们的这个真实的这个世界。
So it may be perceived as complicated, this additional of viewpoint, but it's not my intention. My intention is to have something very efficient with different, let's say, layers and different doors, but the doors are open, so everybody can come in. And but if they want to push the door and enter the room, I let it open, I let it free. If they don't want, they just walk away. But it's not intended to be complicated. Of course, there is a lot of background behind my work. There is, philosopher, whether it's Nietzsche, whether it's Burroughs and so on. But, you can enjoy, for example, Elsa, the artwork behind you without knowing Epicurean theory, without knowing Burroughs, without knowing color theory. But if you want to know more, there is more behind it. But my intention is not to create something complicated. My intention is to create something efficient with different level of meaning. And if you want to go into this different level of meaning, you can go into it and enjoy more.
那其实，在我的创作里面呢，我想要表达的，其实当然最主要并不是想要让事情变得很复杂化，或者是说，就是用这种多元的视角，要让很多不同的意见掺杂进来。但是其实我最想做，其实有效率的一件事情，其实是我的作品，其实它就是有本身蕴含了非常多的层次。但是其实就好像我打开了一扇门，如果说你想要进来，你想要了解更多关于背后的这些想法，那也很欢迎我们可以来进行探讨。但是如果说单纯想要就作品本身的观看，其实单纯的欣赏它其实也是可行的。其实不用想得非常的复杂，尽管我在我的作品后面的确有非常多的层次或者是背景，也蕴含了很多的脉络。那像譬如说您背后的这个系列的作品，其实就算你不了解我。在我的作品里面指涉的可能包括说 William Burroughs 的引用相关的这些知识背景，但是想知道的话，我们很欢迎可以来多多的讨论。那其实并不需要说一定要非常的复杂，了解到很多的内容，我们才能够来欣赏这些作品。
So during your artist career, I think there must be some artists influence you. As you, I heard you mention most is the William Burroughs, and did he give you a big impact or influence you, or other artists that influence you?
那所以在你整个的这个艺术家生涯里面，其实可能多多少少也会有一些艺术家对你来产生了一些启发。那像譬如说刚提到的这个 William Burroughs， 或者是说是不是在你的过去的这些创作里面，还有其他的艺术家可能对你产生了比较大的影响呢？
Burroughs is a very influential figure in my career because he is more or less considered as a writer, poet, than a visual artist. He's part of the Beat Generation movement, along with Ginsberg, Kerouac, the 50s, 60s in the US. And when he was living in Paris, he lived in Paris for 10 years in the 60s. He wrote 3 novels, that's so-called the Cut Up trilogy, and he wrote them using Cut Up, which is a random, including randomness into the writing. Actually, he wrote a page and cut it into 2 parts with a scissor and reassembled the 2 parts, and that creates a non-linearity, that creates randomness. And I've been very influenced by this practice because randomness in text has been used by poets in the past, like Stéphane Mallarmé in the 19th century, or the Dadaists or the Surrealists. But Burroughs is the first one to use randomness in a story, in a novel.
那像刚刚提到这个 William Burroughs，其实对我来讲，他就是一个对我产生了非常大的影响的一位艺术家。但其实他在过去大部分其实他应该是更多的被认为他是一个作家，是一个诗人。但他在50、60年代的时候，在美国甚至是到60年代在巴黎，其实他有产生了很大的影响。他在60年代的时候在巴黎，他写了3本的这个小说。那这个小说呢，主要使用的这个技法是他自己独创的这个所谓 cut up 切割的这个技法。在这个写作的过程里面，其实他加入了非常多关于随机性的这个元素。他可能把一页的文本1分为2切割之后，然后再重新进行重组。所以这样子的创作方式，基本上其实是一种非线性的，破坏了原来的线性文本的叙事方式，然后加入了很多的随机偶发性的这个元素。那这样子的方式，其实对我来讲也是有非常大的影响，因为其实在过去，这样子切割的方式来进行创作，其实不能算第一次，但是它是第一个在使用这个小说写法上面来进行这样子的创作。过去可能比较多是在诗歌上面，在像达达主义啊，或是超现实主义，他们用这样子的手法。那在小说上面 ，William Burroughs 是第一位。
So Burroughs wrote a 300 pages book using random technique. If you do it for the 300 pages, you just get beautiful word combination, but you cannot get a story. It's purely randomness. So what he did actually is have some parts that are random and some parts that are not random. So balancing linearity and non-linearity, balancing control with chance. And from that, I learned a lot. And I'm basically using a similar technique in all my works. There are some parts that are random. I let the hazard happen, but there are some parts that are carefully controlled and planned. And it's the balance of these two that create my own vocabulary, and then I'm developing it using text, using monochrome, using images. There's this balance between control and non-control.
那所以在Burroughs 使用了这样子切割的技法以后，其实他这个所谓的随机性，其实你如果去看他的文本，你会发现，其实你可能看到的是很多很美丽的字句所组成的这个文本，它不见得是这个所谓过去线性的这种故事的说法。所以他在他的创作里面，他等于算是有一部分是这种随机的方式进行，有一部分其实是非随机的，就是可能进行某一种控制。那在这个之间呢，他其实就是在取得一个所谓控制跟随机之间的平衡。那他也在这个所谓的线性叙事或是非线性之间，也在其中去进行他的这个游戏。那我其实也沿用了像这样子的方式，在我的创作里面，其实我也是怎么样去把我的作品里面有一部分是让它很自然的发生，然后有一部分是经过我仔细的这个规划或者是设计，然后去达到我想要控制的这个效果来表现。
So, for example, in the exhibition in Shanghai, there is a piece called The Limits of Control. And that piece is based on text of Burroughs from the 70s, when he basically described how to control a society with technological tool. It was written in the 70s, so 50 years before our time. And this is what is happening all around the world. We now live in a more and more controlled society. So the text is about that. But what I did, I'm using that text, reproducing 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 of time through a very strict algorithm, And then some shapes, some patterns appear, like the X that you have or the cross. These patterns are not programmed by myself. They are just coming from accident, but I know that they will happen. I can control their appearance. And if I let the algorithm reproduce it itself millions of times, everything will be black. So I just stop the reproduction before the blackout until these shapes are really well defined. So you see, it's a matter of playing with the randomness and having some control on it. If I want to do an analogy, I'm like a painter that is using on his palette some red, yellow, and blue, but on my palette, I do have random, and I play with the random, and I put more or less random on my artwork.
那像我们这次在上海展出的这个作品，其中的一件 Limits of Control 有限的控制，这件作品其实最主要就是从70年代 Burroughs 的创作里面来延伸出来。他当时的这个所写的这个文本里面，在谈的是关于社会的这个控制。那个文本大概已经是距今现在大概已经是50年前，其实一直发展到现在。的确，我们现在的社会是越来越多的这个所谓的控制的机制。那所以其实在这个作品里面，我是把这个 William Burroughs 的这个文本呢，某些的字句，我让它不断的重新的这个产生几百次、几千次，一直到某一些的这个形状或者是线条开始出现，像大家可能看到十字或是 X 的这种图案。那其实这个图案并不是我所设计或是生产出来的，我晓得它会在这个过程里面发生，但是我在某一个时机，我会再加入一些我自己要控制的这个元素。因为如果我让它不断重复的产生上百万次以后，其实最终大家看到会是全黑一片的这个视觉。那所以在我的作品里面，其实它主要就是有点像是一个在掌握这个所谓随机元素的这个一个游戏。我就好像一个画家一样，在我的画里面，其实画家可能主要掌握的是这些颜色，红色、黄色、蓝色。那其实在我的作品里面，我就是在掌握这些所谓多或少的这个随机性的控制。
Yeah, the work is really amazing because it looks like you are walking into a cyberspace, and maybe there is no end with the unlimited ending. Looks like you're walking into a cyberspace, maybe to the future or to different dimension. And there's worlds around you, flying around, and it's a really beautiful and amazing work. Like you say, if it's Burroughs' novel, one of his novel, then like into his brain or something.
那其实这些作品真的是让人非常的惊艳，因为其实当你真的站在这些作品面前的时候，其实你好像走进了一个这个虚拟的空间，它好像是无限没有尽头的这样子的一个时空，然后你走在这个里面，其实有点好像是漂浮在空中，其实是一个很美丽的世界，那就好像是由 William Burroughs 所打造出来的这样子的一个美丽的世界。
Yes, thank you. Yeah, my work is about a journey into the cyberspace, but in a critical way. It's not a journey just for enjoying and relaxing. I think we need to be aware and be critical, and at the end of the day, it's a question of we live more and more in a controlled society with less and less privacy, and it's changing our society, our human relationship, and we have to be aware, and we need to find our position to cope with it, and in another way to survive ourselves through this journey. So it's not a relaxed journey. It's an exciting but tough journey.
其实我的作品其实就是希望让大家好像进到一个不一样的时空，这个所谓虚拟的空间，但其实并不是一种所谓好像很舒服的这样子的一个旅程。其实我多少还是带着一点点批判的意义在里头，就是也的确我们在现在的社会里面其实是面临了越来越多的控制，或者是说关于也许我们越来越少的这个所谓的隐私。那所以其实重点是说我们怎么样在这样子的环境、这样子的社会里面去找到我们 们自己的位置。这个是在我作品里面，其实我透过我的作品，好像在带大家进到这样子的旅程里面的一个概念。
Would you like to tell us why you are using Déjà Vu as the name of the solo show and introduce us some new series of your works?
那可不可以再请你跟我们这一次谈谈，就是展览的这个主题 Déjà Vu 似曾相识这个概念，还有一些你这一次新的系列的作品。
Déjà vu is a French word. I think it's beautiful. It's also in the English vocabulary, so it's basically a global word. It's describe an experience, a very profound and intense experience when you have the feeling that you already seen something. So it's an experience where basically past and present and future are overlapping. But it's something, it's not a neutral experience. It's something kind of very intense, a bit like an hallucination type of experience. And
那其实 déjà vu 这个概念呢，其实它是原来是一个法文的这个字词。那当然，它其实现在也在英文里面很常被使用到。它其实是一个非常强烈的一种个人的经验，就是你感觉到你好像曾经看过似曾相识的这种既视感的感觉。所以在这个概念里面，它其实本身就有一个过去、现在、未来这个时间叠合的概念在里面，它并不是一种中性的经验。
And this intense, personal, one-to-one experience is basically what I would like the viewer of the exhibition to experience in a way. So that means when you look at my artwork, it's really a one-to-one experience, because if you sit next door, you may see something different. And if you if you walk 10 meters away, you got something totally different. So that's a unique, intense, personal is basically what I would like it's a set of mind I would like the viewer to have, and
那所以其实这个体验本身，它就是一种非常强烈而且非常个人，就是1对1这种很属于自己独特的这样子的一种体验。那也是我在我的作品里面，或者说让大家在参观我的展览里面，最希望让大家去可以体验到的。你可能从不同的角度，或者说不同的人在看同一件作品的时候，每个人感受到的其实都是个人，或者说这种独特的一个感受。
And this overlap experience of time between present, past, futures is a common ground in all my works. And that's also coming from the cut-up technique that Deep Burrows developed, is when you repeat things you already seen before and you will see it after. And then it creates a kind of intricate and complex time experience. And for example, there is a piece at the entrance of the exhibition called I Am Not a Robot, composed by 10 faces. Angela, maybe you do that bit before I describe it.
那所以在这个经验里头，就像我们刚刚提到的，它是有非常大的一个这个所谓在关于过去、现在、未来这种时间的叠合的经验。那就像是在我们刚早一点提到这个 Burrow， 他在使用这个切割 cut up 的这个技巧，它等于是有很多的重复性在里头，它就有一个时间的概念。可能你在某一些地方你是重复的不断的在看过同样的片段，那所以这个时间性的这个经验呢，其实基本上就是我在所谓 déjà vu 这个概念里面不断想要重复表现的。那像这一次展览里面，大家可以看到这个所谓的 I'm Not a Robot 这个系列的作品。
And that piece is composed of faces, using human faces. Half of them are real one, real human body, like you and me. And the other half are computer generated, artificial intelligence generated, so fake faces. And I'm basically combining half and half all these faces. There are thousands of it. They are at different scale. And the outcome is that you've got an experience of a face that maybe you say, okay, I've already seen that face, but it's just impossible, because that face is a combination of many, many faces, and half of them do not exist. So this is the type of déjà vu experience that I'm trying to provoke. And on top of that, on that piece, I'm basically using the word that you need to click when you navigate on the internet. Basically, the browser asking you to tick on the box, I am not a robot. And this is a very tricky phrase because, of course, we are not a robot, but even a robot that will behave like human will click also on the phrase I am not a robot. So it's actually a very ironic and universal sentence. And I'm using that I am not a robot integrated into the faces.
OK， 在这个 I'm Not a Robot 系列里面呢，大家会看到它是由非常非常多张的这个脸所组成。那在这个所谓的这个脸的这个影像里面，其实有一半是就像你跟我一样，就是真实的这些人类的这些脸的这个轮廓，但是有一部分其实它是假的，是由这个电脑人工智能所生成的这些假的脸。那我有把这些半真半假，其实有点像是把它们混合在一起，可能不断的重复了几千次以后，其实你现在看到的这个结果，你可能在某一些的这个脸的这个轮廓上面，你会觉得好像是你曾经看过或者你认识的某一个人，但实际上这是不可能的，因为其实它本身就是由半真半假这样子的脸庞所组成。所以它基本上是一个不存在的这样子的一个人像的脸，那这就是我在这个所谓的 déjà vu 的这个概念里面想要创造出来的这种经验。其实就好像我们现在常常在使用这个网络的时候，你可能在浏览器里面，在某一些时候可能页面会要求你去选择I'm not a robot， 我不是机器人的选项来证明你不是电脑生成的这些也许是垃圾邮件，或者说一些非真实的人性的选择。但是其实实际上我们在做这样子的选择，或者说在勾选这样子的这个我不是机器人的选项的时候，其实它有一点点这种所谓的双面讽刺这样子的概念。那这就是我主要在这个系列里面所想要传达的这个讯息。
You also have one series with vertical stripes in the glass, and it's a crack inside. Is it a real cracks, or I'm curious, is it real cracks or it's just the visual effects?
那在另外一个系列这次展出的作品里面，有一些这个直线的这个线条的部分是在所谓的这个玻璃的材料里面，那里头呢好像有一些这种裂痕，那实际上不晓得这个是实际上真正产生的这个裂痕，还是说只是一种视觉的效果。
I'm very happy that you asked the question because I play with that. I play with the fact that the crack could be a pattern because they are inside. Actually, it's a 3-layer glass, and I physically crack the inside layer. But it's a physical crack. It's with a hammer, and I hit it until it cracks. It's kind of a physical work, and there's big bang and so on. But the outcome is because it's inside, and because there are so many other patterns, is that it's could be a fake crack. It could be a representational, but in fact it's not. And for me, it's important because the cracking is like a crystallization of the glass. It basically behaves like a time crystal, and glass is a very timeless material. I mean, in 10,000 years, I don't know if there will be human on Earth, but the artwork in glass will remain because it's a very, very solid and strong material, and it will remain like it is. And that the fact that it is timeless and crack is something I like to play with, and that's interests me.
我很高兴你有发现，在我这个系列的作品有一种这样错视的这种感觉。实际上，这就是我主要在这件作品里面想要去尝试跟创造的一种效果。那实际上，在这个作品里面，它有3层的这个玻璃。实际上，我真的在某一层，我在这个作品里面的某一层，其实我是用这个锤子把它敲碎的。那可是因为你在视觉上面看到，还有一些其他的图腾跟形状是覆盖上去的，所以你可能会有一点混淆的感觉，不太确定它到底实际上是真的碎裂，还是只是一种假的创造出来的效果。那其实，在这个所谓的这个 crack 碎裂的这个裂痕里头呢，其实我认为它就有点像是一个时间的这个结晶，就是在不同的层次里面，其实不管过了很长的一段时间，其实这些艺术作品，这个玻璃的这个裂痕，它其实会持续的留下来。那这样子的概念，其实它就失去了一个，它等于是代表了一个没有时间性的这种概念。
Yeah, because the work looks from a distance. When we look from a distance, it seems very colorful and light. But when we pick it up, then I realize it's 6 kilograms each square. So it's unbelievable. It's so heavy in a glass, in a small cube, in a small square, but it's so heavy.
那很有趣，是因为其实从这个远远的看呢，其实这个作品它看起来就是非常的彩色的，色彩非常的丰富的，而且它看起来其实是很轻。但实际上，如果说我们真的把它拿起来，它其实至少有这个6公斤，它是非常有重量的。那其实有点难以相信，这样一个小小的方块，竟然是这样子这么重的这个重量。
Actually, it's 15 kilograms. It's much more heavy than that. But yeah, it's heavy and it's a very strong material. And I like it a lot because it's like a living material. It plays a lot with the lights, natural light, artificial lights. You've got all the reflection and you've got all the reflection within the different layer of glass. And yeah, it's a very fascinating material. I really enjoy it a lot, and I'm happy that you show several displays in the gallery. And it's also an echo to the large outdoor piece I did in Pudong in Shanghai, where there is that piece I did 2 years ago, which is composed of 2 40-meter long panel. And if you want, I can describe it and talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
实际上这个作品其实并不止6公斤，它实际上有15公斤，它其实是非常重的。那是的确没有错，这个15公斤。那实际上呢，它其实这样子的重量，其实它是非常坚硬、非常的强壮的这样子的一个材质。我称它为就是这种生存的这个还活着的这样子的一个材料。那其实我主要就是在玻璃这个材质里面呢，其实我就是想要让它去有很多不同的面向的这种操作。其实因为它本身它也会去反射，不管是自然光还是这种人造光的这些反射，其实也都算是这个材质本身可以创造出来的效果。所以我其实很享受在使用这个材质可以创造出的这种视觉感受。那像我们这次在这个上海浦东也有一个非常大型的这个户外装置。其实实际上它是由2片40米长的这个玻璃所组成的。
Yeah, why don't we just talk about the outdoor installation? Because I was there, I've seen it. It was very impressive, and it was very long and located in the Lujiazui financial district near the river. And would you like to talk about this installation?
那我们来谈谈这个刚刚提到这个陆家嘴金融中心江边的这个户外装置，因为实际上我有去过现场看到这样子的作品，其实它非常的长，然后也非常规模非常的大，所以其实是让人印象非常深刻的。
It is a place where you have cultural building, you have residential building, and you have the river, and people are basically walking by all this area. So the idea was to interact with the different passerby. They are pedestrian. They walk. Some may bike, but there is no car. So, and I choose to work with a pattern of lines, and because lines create a path, create a boundary, and the lines pattern I use is basically a kind of curved line that you stretch, but you stretch excessively. So if you stretch it on 50, 100 meters, the beginning of the pattern will look like a straight line. And at the end, you've got the curve, which play like Baroque spaghetti type of thing.
那其实在这个装置里面，它其实主要是在这个陆家嘴的这个高楼建筑里面，其实它就是靠近江边的地方。主要呢，它其实每天会有非常多的这个行人经过，所以它其实在这个装置里面，我主要想要做的其实是一种跟这个路人在行走经验的这个过程里面的一种互动。那其实我主要在这个作品里面，我选择用线的这个图案来做这个创作。其实线它其实也代表了一种所谓的界限的一种概念。那所以我在使用这个图腾的时候，其实我是让它不断的拉伸延伸。当你把它拉伸到延伸非常长的时候，其实在某一个视角来看，其实它反而会变成是有点像这种意大利面这样子，有点曲面的这样子的线条的形状。
So these lines that are stretched, that lay between curves and straight line, tell a lot of stories, universal stories about, human, mankind, displacement, and so on. And on one side, I put a lot of lines in random colors. And on the other side, exactly the same lines are in white. So when you walk from the river, what you see is a pattern of white lines. And as soon as you turn around it, you see bright, colorful red, blue, green, yellow line. And it was important for me that the same pattern can have two different meaning. You have two different colors, white and colorful. And I use glass, to be back at the question before. I use glass as a material because it's a very powerful material. You can see through. So behind the panel, you can see the people. But so it's actually easy to integrate into the urban space. But depending on the light, it's also very monumental and very massive at the same time. And it's also very strong and playful material.
那其实我在这个作品的这个设计里头呢，其实主要就是在这种直线或是曲线之间的一种游戏。实际上呢，在其中一面的时候，你看到的是这个随机的颜色的操作，可能绿色、蓝色、黄色、红色。但是在另外一面反过来，同样的线条，其实我使用的是完全这个纯白的这个表现。所以实际上你在行走经过这个装置的时候，一面它是完全纯白，但是当你转个向，其实你可能看到完全是不一样的这种色彩丰富的这个效果。那其实就是在我想要传达，其实它就是一种这种好像双面意义的这样子的经验跟体验。那另外我使用的是这个玻璃作为这个作品的这个材料。那除了刚刚提到它是一个非常有力量的一种材质，其实它的特性就是这个可以看穿的这种特性呢，其实也是在我这个空间感里面，我想要去让它可以传递，透过可穿透的这种性质，其实你会感受得到它这种非常大规模的这种不同的这个视觉的空间上面的这种感受。
And it is a public artwork that the viewer should experience using their own way, but either looking very close to the glass or from a long distance, from the river, from both sides, and you get different experience, also different time of the day. During night, there is an inside lighting structure that gives totally different experience and different light. So it relates very much to the artwork you have in the gallery, where depending on the position, depending how far you are, how close you are, you've got different experience. And my art is about this combination and accumulation of all these experience and these different viewpoints.
那这件作品其实就是非常的强调这个所谓的这种体验，或者是实际上与他互动的这个经验，不管是你从近的很靠近的他去看他，或者说隔着江边从远远的去欣赏这件作品的时候，甚至是在一天不同的这个日光的时间，白天的时候或者是晚上的时候，其实你可以体验到那种在不同光源下面这件作品它可以呈现出来的这个感受完全是不一样。那就像我们在这次展览里面也有展出类似这个同样这个几何线条的作品，其实它也是依照每一个人在展场里面不同的距离或者说不同的位置，你可以去体验到的这种不同的空间的感受。
Because I think you mentioned during your talk, you mentioned about time, randomness, control, and there are several concepts in your works. And do you think technology plays what role, computer or technology, in your work? Does the computer really stands for your brush or something else?
那我们其实在过去很多的这个可能谈到了关于时间、关于随机性，或是关于控制，在作品里面这些不同的这些概念，其实同时都并存的。那其实实际上在你的创作里面，所谓这个科技或电脑，他们是真的是就像你的画笔一样吗？
Computation, technology are my tools, and they are the tool I'm using to create my artwork. But at the same time, they are also the subject matter. So they are both tool and both subject. So they play a very important role. As a tool, what I try to do is to control them. So to use them in a very simple way, even though it may look complicated, but the usage is rather simple and controlled by me. And I, try to provoke the tools to make mistake, try to provoke the machine to have hallucination, try to use them in a critical way. And at the same time, the outcome is talking about our life with technology. And it has a very significant influence, and it will have a more and more significant influence. And I do believe as human, compared to the machine, our basic characteristic is our relationship with time. The fact that, unlike the machine, we know the time flows, or we know the time is cycling. And the machine, they live in a permanent time, the real time. The real time is present, and present is crunching data, but they don't have the same feeling of past, present, and future we human beings have. And this is basically the area where I'm questioning and, let's say, playing.
那其实不管是这个电脑或者说科技，其实这些对我来讲，它们就是一个工具。对我来讲，它同时是一个工具，它同时也是我在创作里面一个非常重要的一个主题。那其实这些工具，它扮演了非常重要的角色，因为我使用这些工具来进行某种程度的这种控制，我在利用它，但是我使用它的方式其实是非常简单的，而且它是由我来进行这个控制的。那我也利用这些不管是电脑还是这些机器，其实我尝试让他们去创造出错误，就是在他们的所谓这些使用的过程里面，其实有时候甚至是产生了一种像是幻觉或是错觉这样子的这种错误的引导。那另一方面，其实我想探讨，其实就是我们现在人可能在生活里面跟科技之间这样子的关系，科技已经对我们的影响其实产生了非常大的面向的这种延伸。那所以其实不管是人还是机器，在跟时间上面的关系也是我所探讨的。那因为我认为其实人才是实际上真的可以去体验到这种所谓时间的循环，或者说时间的这种时间流的这样子的感受，我们可以感受得到过去、现在跟未来，但是在机器的部分，它其实就只有一个固定的这样子的一个时间，它是没有办法去体验到这种所谓时间的实质感的。
Yeah, I think the term déjà vu is a very good term to bring up the whole concept of your works, because machines or computers or AI, maybe they don't have feelings, but we as human beings, we still got a feeling of time or all the works you created. And I was wondering if you ask a computer what is deja vu, and maybe he cannot tell because either 0, 1, black or white. There's no ambiguity for computers. What do you think?
那我认为，其实 déjà vu 这个概念，其实就是一个在你作品里面一个非常好的一个总结的一个概念。因为其实像我们提到，在 AI 这种人工智慧里面，它可能没有所谓这种感受性去感受，不管是时间感还是说情绪这样子的面向。但人是有很多的感受或者是感觉的。那像譬如我们去问电脑什么是似曾相识，它是没有办法去判断这样子的一个经验。
Yes, I think déjà vu is a real human characteristic. It's a personal, intense human experience that the machine cannot experience because the machine do not have feeling experience. Maybe the machine could recreate a déjà vu experience, but it will not understand what it is. And as in the same time, when you have a machine learning algorithm that recognize, a dog, he may say at 99.9% that there is a dog in the photo, but it does not understand what is a dog. It does not understand what's the difference between a dog and a cat, a dog and a wolf. And it's just, crunching data and copy and paste. And I think, yes, in the future, we need to really clarify our position, where human being we stand against or versus or in cohabitation with the machine and the bots. And déjà vu surely is a human being characteristic.
那的确，其实这个 déjà vu 似曾相识这种概念呢，的确它是非常非常人性的一种个人化的这个体验。那我相信，其实就算一个机器它再怎么样的有很强的这种学习的能力，其实它也没有办法理解这种所谓人性的这样子关于感觉或者是感受性的这种体验。就像可能99.9%的这个 AI 人工智能，它也许它可以判别在这些很多很多的影像里面，一只狗狗它长得是什么样子，可是它永远没有办法去判别狗或者是猫或者甚至是狼，它们之间究竟它可以判别得出这3样的差异，可是它并没有办法真的去指出这三者之间到底是什么样子的不同。所以其实我认为在未来，其实最主要就是在所谓这个我们人类的这种位置上面，我们会去慢慢的去厘清，在所谓不管是关于时间，还是在关于跟时间之间的概念里面，人跟机器之间的这种差异。
Yeah, for me, the word was really representing romantic, poetic, something maybe we don't remember or we should remember or whatever, but you use computer and technology, and in the end, you create something very poetic and very romantic work. For me, even the faces are really romantic, poetic works. And so my final question for you, what exactly the message you try to deliver through all your works?
那所以在我们看这些作品的时候，其实我认为这个déjà vu 这个字本身，它其实就是传达代表了一种非常浪漫，或是诗意，或甚至包含了这种所谓对于记忆的这样子的一个概念。那所以其实，在你的作品里面，你透过电脑或者说科技来创造出这种很浪漫诗意的感受，其实最主要想要再请教一下，是在你的作品里面，你究竟想要传达是什么样子的讯息？
I'm not delivering any message. I think artists, we should just ask questions. Deliver message, this is for the politician or the activist. As artists, we are in the unknown. And I think we just ask question and ask question that people maybe do not ask themselves and try to make things visible in another way. And then there is no real answer. There is more a variety of answer, a variety of message. And the question I'm basically raising is a fundamental question about what's the human being. Why are we on Earth? What will be our futures? So it's very fundamental question about our own existence, and through the prism of technology, because I do think technology are changing our society, our human body, and our social relationships. So basically, these are questions about our possible futures as human beings using technology, and most of them, they relate to time, to futures in plural, and to present in plural.
那主要其实我认为，我并没有在传达什么样子的讯息。我认为艺术家其实最重要的工作，其实就是去提问，去问很多的不同的问题。那我们是活在一个其实是未知的事件里面，所以其实当艺术家提出很多不同的问题的时候，不管是人们有意识或是没有意识到的时候，艺术家是透过我的创作来让某一些问题，或者是让它在某一种形式上面去进行呈现。那也许并不一定是真的是提供了什么样一个真实的这个答案，但是主要像我的作品里面，其实我可能提出了关于其实是很多艺术家会问的一些基本的问题，究竟人类是什么样子的存在？那为什么我们会在世界上？以及人类未来会如何？尤其是在我们现在这个社会里面，的确我们很大程度的受到了这个科技的这个影响。那它是怎么样的去改变了我们，改变了这个社会？主要我想探讨就是在未来究竟它是有什么样子的可能？那可能在这个探讨里面，很多的面向就关于时间或是未来这样子的一个概念。
Yeah, I think you did raise questions and provoke more questions. But anyway, I feel happy for after seeing the show, and I feel happy and feel at least a true value of as a human being, and that's something very touching, especially in the end of this year when all the the COVID things surround us, and I think that's something really helpful.
那的确，我认为你不只是提出了这个问题，其实你也带出了更多我们可能会好奇的这些不同的面向的问题。那很高兴这一次在看了这个展览，其实最主要，其实我认为可以更体验到我们这个所谓身为人类的价值，我们值得珍惜的地方。对我来讲是一个很值得的纪念。
Thank you for this positive and optimistic comment.
Yes. And thank you for the in-depth interview. It's been a great honor representing you, and wish us success for your solo show in China.
那谢谢 Pascal 今天跟我们这个进行了这个很有深度的谈话，那也很荣幸可以代理并呈现这一次的展览。那祝我们这次展览成功。
See you soon, hopefully.
See you soon in real life.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.